PTI coming back in moments as they tell us where they think Travis Hunter's future position will be in the NFL. We'll also hear from the Heisman winner, as it was a very busy day at the Combine, and we are following a developing story from Indy with the potential top pick in April's NFL draft. That is Abdul Carter. A medical exam revealed a stress reaction in the Penn State star's right foot. Carter wasn't scheduled to work out at the Combine because of a shoulder injury he suffered in the college football playoff. How good is this kid? Well, Carter's the #1 pick in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft released earlier this week. His 23.5 tackles for loss were the most in the FBS last season. He registered a pressure on over 18% of his pass rush snaps. That, too, was best in the FBS. And SportsCenter's on the road, presented by Geico. Senior NFL insider Adam Schefter joins us now live from Indy. Schefty, what's the reaction around Indy on this development with Carter's right foot?
Well, Kevin, I think initially there were some concerns about whether or not this stress reaction injury would require surgery, but further scans today meant that the doctors advised Abdul Carter not to have that surgery. He's now going to go through and work out at his March 28th pro day at Penn State, when teams will get an up-close and personal look at how he, his shoulder, his foot are all faring. That'll be a critical pro day on March 28th at Penn State. But I think teams right now still don't believe that this is going to have any type of dramatic effect on the player who could potentially be the #1 overall pick in this draft.
Titans are on the clock, and later on SportsCenter, Stefania Bell, our injury analyst, has a great breakdown on specifically this injury surrounding Carter. All right, let's stay with the buzz and the storylines coming out of the Combine in Indy. What's the latest surrounding Matthew Stafford's future?
Kevin, that situation hangs over the Combine and really hangs over the NFL offseason. What happens with Matthew Stafford will help determine the future of other quarterbacks and where they play this offseason. Right now, the Rams and Matthew Stafford have been talking, trying to see if there's a way to figure it out for Matthew Stafford to remain in Los Angeles. They've gone over a rework contract. Both sides are waiting to see whether they can make enough progress, bridge their differences to bring Stafford back to Los Angeles for the 2025 season. If they can't, that's where it gets interesting. That's where a trade comes into play. You'd be watching the Raiders, the Giants, the Steelers, any team that has been vying for Matthew Stafford's services. But really, it's up to the Rams and Stafford first to see if they could figure out a solution. If they can, he's a Ram. If not, then the NFL offseason officially gets underway with a Matthew Stafford trade.
And a reminder, we're just 13 days away from the start of the new league year. Shefty staying in midseason form here in late February. Shefty, we know you're staying caffeinated and keeping your head on a swivel at all times in Indy. Always doing that. We appreciate
Kevin, you have to. You never know what's going to be coming at you in the mean streets of Indianapolis at the Starbucks here.
NFL security not involved in this segment. Thank you so much, Shefty. A quick look at the top prospects in the NFL draft. According to Matt Miller, he has Abdul Carter atop his list with Colorado's Travis Hunter and Michigan defensive back Will Johnson among his top 3. Johnson's teammate Mason Graham is right behind him at 4, with Georgia edge rusher Jalen Walker rounding out the top 5. And with that, let's bring in NFL draft analyst Matt Miller joining us now live from Indy. Matt, what does today's medical news now mean for Carter's draft stock?
No, I don't think there's any change. As Adam said, I think it's good news. The fact that on the rescans they saw no surgery needed. He's still going to be able to participate at his pro day. I haven't talked to a single team that's worried about this. He is the best player in this draft class by my estimation. I think most teams agree with that evaluation of him as well. We saw him fight through the shoulder injury, which was maybe more of an issue in that Notre Dame game. The fact that this is a foot injury that he said it hasn't hurt him, it hasn't impacted his performance, certainly because he was all over the backfield for Penn State this past year. So I don't expect this to be something that would cause him to slip. I'll tell you, there's probably a lot of teams outside the top 3 picks in this draft that might hope that this would push him down draft boards, but he still has to be the favorite to be the first overall pick by the Tennessee Titans. I can't imagine a scenario where he would get out of the top 3 picks foot injury, shoulder injury, whatever else you want to throw out there, Kevin. He's just the best player in this class.
You keep on saying top 3 picks because it is a concern at number 1. And Shefty just talked about a lot riding on that workout at Penn State a month away. With that status in doubt here in this injury, it could open the door for the Titans to take Travis Hunter, number 1 overall. Laura Rutledge caught up with the Heisman winner earlier today.
What do you find these teams are saying to you about the possibility of playing on both sides of the ball?
A couple teams, they took me in as receiver, and a couple teams took me in as DB, so I think it's still up in the air.
What was the feedback you got from teams looking at you as a receiver?
It's a lot of things I need to work on both sides of the ball. So,
what do you think you need to work on most?
you can always work on technique. So I definitely need to work on technique, and it's a couple more small things.
And then what do you think about the potential of being an NFL player who plays both wide receiver and DB? How important is that for you?
That's super important to me. I've been doing it my whole life, so I would like for them to let me give me the opportunity to do it again.
There's a lot of conversation about you, potentially the number 1 overall pick. How do you manage all of that as you go through this process?
I kind of don't look at that stuff. I just look at fishing all day. So,
what do you see on fishing?
I just see people catching fish. I can't wait to get back home and catch me some fish too.
I love it. We can't wait for that too. Thanks so much, Travis.
No problem. Thank you.
He loves his fishing, especially competing with his head coach, Dion. Hunter says he can play both ways here, Matt. How are scouts and execs viewing his role at the next level?
Kevin, you talk to 32 teams, you get 16 different answers because half of them see him as a receiver, half see him as a defensive back. I think what's interesting is how Colorado handled it. He went to defensive back meetings. He would go with the corners for meetings, and then there would be a package of plays signaled into him on offense. That's how NFL teams, I think, are approaching this. It's why he's listed as a cornerback at the Combine, but it's going to be really unique to what the specific team needs. If he goes to a team like the New England Patriots and pick number 4, yeah, there's absolutely the possibility he could play both sides, especially early in his career. The thing to remember about Travis Hunter, he is a 4.0 student. He can handle the mental workload of learning both sides of the ball. That's not going to be an issue for him. I know he loves fishing. He also really loves football because he played over 1,000 snaps this past year for the Buffalo. So I'm not doubting his ability to do both sides just because of that. Football IQ is through the roof. He loves the game. His work ethic, his conditioning are through the roof because we've seen that with how much he could play at Colorado. So I'm not concerned about it. If he wants to play wide receiver and corner, I think he should get the shot to do it.
The Giants could reel him in. They need some help, some added talent on that roster. Mel Kiper has Hunter going 3rd overall to New York in his latest mock draft. Matt, we've talked about how deep this defensive line class is. You've attended workouts earlier today. They were on Showcase. Who stood out?
Shamar Stewart has been fantastic. To come in at 267 pounds, Kevin, he jumped 40 inches in the vertical jump, which is pretty high. He can get up there. He can dunk a basketball. But then he turned around and did a 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump, which is in the 99th percentile ever for players his size. And behind me just a few minutes ago, he ran an unofficial 4.6 flat in the 40-yard dash at 6'5", 267 pounds. Those numbers are astounding. Now, the question with Stewart is he only had 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons at Texas A&M. There were a lot of times where he was asked to sniff out read option quarterbacks, but his pressure production was actually best for the Aggies. So he is a really interesting case study between measurables and production. But I can't imagine an athlete like that not being drafted in the top 15 picks of the draft, maybe even higher, maybe even top 10 once we get to Green Bay.
Okay, Matt, we appreciate your